you've you've spent many years pursuing a PhD degree, and I know it's in engineering. And just thinking about how long that took and all the homework that you had to do and like the logical structure of the material that you were studying, how has that been able to help you in communication in your daily living, or how has it been able to help you?
Yeah, I can draw a lot of parallels. I think it has a lot to do with me as an individual. I saw many people go through the same PhD program. I've seen many people go through other PhD programs, and they don't come out on the other side like me. So there's a missing element, and that's me. They're not me. They struggled. They crumbled. I saw a girl. This is where I really lost faith in academia. There was a girl in my office who, smart enough, did work. Work is not all made equal. The ditch digger is working really, really hard, and so is the CEO. And arguably, the ditch digger's exerting more metabolic effort, and so he's working harder in that sense, but creating less of an impact. So this girl was working really hard, and she was in the same department as me, same kind of office space, sort of. We talked a lot. And she'd been working there for years. We had the same advisor, so you could call it like mentor, like the same head guy who was the head of the department, and he like oversaw, like, make sure you accomplish what you're supposed to accomplish, get the money that you're supposed to get, and publish papers like you're supposed to publish, and all of these requirements that, we could go into like what is needed for a PhD, but her conclusions were questionable. She was really making shit up, and we all make shit up at some point, but I was so good at rhetoric, in a certain environment, I was always a kind of confident communicator. It was really out in the social matrix that I lacked the confidence. I didn't have the competence of how to talk with people that didn't acknowledge me as a certain status. If I start at ground zero with people, how do you start that communication when you're so used to everybody treating you level 7 or something? And basically, I saw her cry her way into getting a doctorate. That her document was good enough for a master's degree, but it didn't advance the science. The big distinction was a master's degree contributes to the body of science. A PhD should push the science to the next level. And so it needs to be innovative. It's not just little minor innovations like I tweaked this thing, this little variable. It's like, no, here's a new idea that could change the world. That's a PhD.
Mm.
Hers was it was just modifying a previous kind of body of work. It was deserving of a master's degree. And my advisor was so dead set. It's going to be a master's. Like, I know you've been here for so many years, and I know that your mom and I are friends, but, it's a master's. It's a master's. It's a master's. One day she comes back just like sobbing back into the office. Long story short, she got the PhD. She cried her way, changed the work. She cried and then I lost faith in my advisor because, I already knew I wouldn't call him like beta, but I wouldn't call him beta. All respect to Mark T. Brown. It was just, he has a different mentality about things, and he's an old guy, didn't want to fight about it. And, whatever. But that watered down the department. It watered down it watered down my PhD. My PhD is now next side by side to her PhD. And it's like, compare that to, like, mine was like a whole universe. I don't need to go into like what mine was about, but mine had the potential to change economics if somebody picked it up, because I wasn't going to do it for my career. But if somebody picked it up, looked at it, and then extrapolated further, and I gave a lot of foresight into like how this could be extrapolated into this and that and the other. I just don't have time to collect all that data, and I'm not going to do a career of academia. Like, it would change things. Hers was not. And as far as like helping my skill set now, it really helped me be skeptical. I became very scientifically skeptical, and I stopped, going to conferences and presenting to people who are really trying to pick apart your ideas. A lot of people in academia are just socially, they're suffering. And so they take out all of that anger and suffering, like when you go to start picking apart your ideas. And I was really good about like chopping up their ideas and like, no, that's invalid, this, that, and the other. And really making sense of what I had done. And so I gained a little confidence there. But my ability to be skeptical about what science is saying about certain things. The big one was like global warming. My PhD is environmental engineering sciences, and I read probably 1,000 peer-reviewed publications over the 4.5 years or however long I was there. And there's a lot of opinions about things. You can find basically anything to support whatever opinion you want to have. You'll find some evidence. Somebody has published some evidence. I'll bet you could probably find some really good peer-reviewed publication. What does that mean? Peer-reviewed is like you submit, you write a document that has like references and everything. It's all formatted correctly, and you submit it to a journal, which is like an established kind of company or whatever. And then they send it out anonymously to some other scientists, and they say, you don't know who this author is, and the author doesn't know who you are, so give your take on this. Does this qualify as good enough to be in the journal? And if 2 out of 3 say yes, then it's peer-reviewed, and it goes into the journal. So your peers need to approve of your work. And I had 5 peer-reviewed publications while I was a doctor. Maybe 4. One was a conference. So 4 peer-reviewed publications while I was a doctor. And I'll bet there's probably peer-reviewed publications on flat earth theory. I'll bet you could find peer-reviewed publications that like confirm flat earth. You could probably find peer-reviewed publications. There were peer-reviewed publications that were convincing. I read one that convinced me almost for a second that the earth was 6,000 years old. By using how much, and it was science. It was a guy that worked in the Catholic Church, but he was a physicist. And he calculated based because uranium decays. When uranium decays, helium molecules come off of it. And so the atmosphere, you can measure how much helium is in the atmosphere and date the Earth. Because helium escapes the atmosphere because it's so light. So it actually, some of it will just fly off into space. And so he was doing all these measurements, and he was like, see, it's evidence, like this and that. And I was like, I mean, this is compelling, but I know this idea is absurd. I mean, you have all of this other body of geologic science and everything you have to contend with. But that one isolated piece of information, you know. So I learned to be very skeptical. And I learned to manage my time. I learned to have a little more flexibility in when my working hours, my sleeping hours, because I was really coming from the incarnation before that was drug addict. The incarnation before that was collegiate wrestler. And the incarnation before that, I was, in high school. I was under my parents.